channel. This is how we're going to photography, and we have some new products in place now. You're going to be looking for a budget power box to operate your entire thing, but you're also spending hundreds of dollars. Well, it's the perfect solution. Let's keep it this what model here. I can use this for a energy break. Tell me, it's absolutely everything that I need to do. But I don't know, especially some more decent components. Like a what's keyboards and the ability to kind of turn certain switches off and on like you need them to, and not just always constantly running. Well, the good news is we do have a big program now available. I want you to meet svbony sv305 power box cover. I'm really excited about this new update on the power box.
Hello and welcome to Asteroid Reviews. Today we're going to be reviewing the sv405 sv241 Asteroid Power Box, what it is and how it works. The controller is basically like a smart extension hub for your astrophotography gear, giving extra power ports and helping manage your devices more efficiently, taking the load off your computer, ASI Air or mount controller. It comes with a few cables. First, we have the main DC power cable used to power the svbony power box. It comes with 3 DC cables, a temperature and humidity sensor, plus a separate temperature probe, and a USB Type B to USB Type A cable for connecting the power box to your computer, ASI Air or other devices. We have a little dovetail mounting foot here, but as we don't have any slots available on our telescope, we will be using cable ties. The power box features 2 blue USB 3 ports, 3 white USB 2 ports, and a USB Type C port. Regulated is for steady power to your gear. PWM out is for dew heaters, and P and H and temp are for those temperature and humidity probes. This side has 5 switch ports, so you can turn on off things like cameras, plus 1 always on port. Lastly, we have a PC port to connect the box to your computer, which in our case is the ASI Air and the power input. Okay, so now that we are all tied up, making sure no ties cover any ports, we will start connecting all the wires. Starting with the autofocus into the white USB slot on the svbony. Next, our guide cam into the white USB slot, and then the main camera into a blue slot and into a switch slot. Here I put the dew heater into another switch slot, but I think I could have put it into the PWM out slot instead. Then we have the power cables in here and into the EcoFlow. Next, we're going to connect the PC port into a blue port on the ASI Air so they can talk to each other. If you are struggling to connect anything on the ASI Air when using the app, just unplug and replug this PC port and everything should connect. Next, we are going to power the ASI Air. We have 2 available ports left on the svbony and 3 available ports on the ASI Air. we only have the tracking wire left to connect, which we will be connecting into the ASI Air, as the power box controller did not want to connect to my Skywatcher HE5Q Pro tracking mount. Whenever I tried to connect the tracking wire to the svbony, it would disconnect everything else. So now everything is powered up and connected. Let's see a side-by-side of the svbony setup versus the ASI Air setup with everything powered on and taking photos. We can see that with using the svbony, the ASI Air is actually under much less stress. So let's get everything set up outside and go for a shot of the Orion Nebula. Starting with the tracking mount and adding the counterweights, adding the telescope and balance, the battery and power cables, Next, we're going to focus the telescope and set the tracking mount to the home position.
Passports. Thanks. Thermostat over.
Because there are 5 a.m. flights in your area, there are drivers in your area.
This race is really heating up.
Jobs, investment, quality of life, it's all on the line.
Tennessee is in front. Oklahoma and Arkansas close behind. Please incoming traffic with phase out income taxes.
Missouri is getting loud
Incoming property taxes are really holding Missouri back.
and costing families.
To take the lead, Missouri needs Amendment 5.
This August, phase out taxes on paychecks and cut property taxes.
That's the tax. May the least prosperity with Amendment 5.
Domino's has large one-topping pizzas for $7.99 if you carry out. Okay, guess I'm carrying out.
Spring.
Come on, man.
It's time to run it. Run it until the grass becomes long. Until the hedges start covered. Run it again.
Then perform a polar align. Search for the Orion Nebula and go to the mount will now move, pointing the telescope at
Working
the Orion
that
Nebula.
way.
Now we're pointing at the target. We'll quickly see what it looks like on focus mode. And a video mode. Next we will do a 10-second test shot. Everything seems to be looking okay. And now we're pointing at the target. We will do another autofocus. Then see what a 60-second test shot looks like.
Okay, so that's looking good. Right, next we'll turn on the guiding. And I just want to reposition the Orion Nebula to the bottom left, just to be a little bit different this time. And now everything is ready to go. I'll start taking 120-second exposures. For this shoot, I only managed to get about 20 minutes of data, but the final photo ended up looking like this. An absolute fantastic product by svbony. Would highly recommend, especially if you have lots of gadgets for your astrophotography rig. We will be gifting this power box as a competition reward on our Facebook platform, so be sure to join and stay tuned. Also, check out the description for some svbony promotion codes and links. More information on our Facebook group and how we run our competitions. We hope you liked this video. If so, please give us a like and subscribe. Wishing you clear skies, and thank you for watching.
Upgrade your big screen.
The pros and the cons with PC, you've got to admit that your ability to cheaply do things like power switching is kind of a huge hassle.
Now there's an inexpensive solution to this massive caveat of using a PC. The svbony sv405c
Well, that sounds like a really great option. So you're telling me that in this box that you just handed me, we can unpack a device that when combined with a mini PC will be a true ASI killer? Well, maybe. Let's see what we see. All right, this is one of the first reviews that I'm going to be doing, and just so that everyone knows, I bought this box myself with my own money, and I had it shipped to not my own name, just to be sure that no one thought, there was no, I'm not big enough to really be on any of it anyway. But just so you know, I bought this with my own money. If you appreciate this sort of content, make sure to like and subscribe. Liking videos, especially some of the earlier ones, and subscribing really helps small YouTube channels like myself grow. And let me know what you thought about this content. All right. This is the SV241 Pro from svbony. Now, I've purchased a lot of products from svbony in the past, and they're generally pretty good quality. The software support is a little bit less so, and if you have issues with drivers, then sometimes it's hard to get good answers. But if you don't have those issues, then everything's usually pretty great. Now, support can sometimes be lacking, and because the brand isn't as popular as ZWL, there's less people on the forums that know how to fix that one little thing you had, so sometimes you have to go it alone. Though, to be honest, this isn't all that different from other smaller brands in the space like the Codex and whatnot. So why is the ASI Air so widely used? One of the main points of the is its ability to not just be a really good interface on the software side, but on the hardware side too. So it's one box that handles power, data, and I think on some modules we even do variable power output for things like video strips. But for those of us that want to use cameras from other brands that aren't ZWO, you're out of luck. I have an ASI Air and I do use it for travel, but I can only take this one specific camera with it, and it also has to have a ZWO focuser on it. And that can be kind of rough sometimes. So my main imaging rig and the rig that I use for experiments uses Windows PCs. And there are some great options for Windows PCs, from high-end bells and whistle options from that very excited gentleman over at Prima Lucia to options from Nord. I personally settled on small PCs, that have very little support because I'm a glutton for punishment. Mostly because they're like $200 and it's hard to beat something with enough processing power for Nina and PHP2 while also having like 16 gigs of RAM, including a 512 gig hard drive and a Windows license for like $200-300. The prices change on those all the time, but it's not that hard to find something with like an Intel N100 system, plenty of ports that run off a 12-volt socket like the rest of our equipment. The main issue most of us Windows people have is the mess of cables. And how do you power so many DC devices from like one power supply? Sure, you can use those squid splitters like I was showing earlier, but the quality can be sometimes suspect. Worst case, you might have one USB port for your main camera, one USB port for your guide camera, one USB port for your focus motor, one power port for your main camera, one power for your focus motor, like the Western ones, and then power for your DP. That's a bunch of cables that have to be routed up to the moving part of your rig from a stationary part. So, there's even trade-offs there. You might have all of your cables neatly bundled, but if one goes bad or you want to change out a piece of equipment that's got a different cable, you're going to have to cut zip ties and having to redo the whole bundle. Or if you want to live a little dangerously, you don't cable manage as tightly. And then you wake up one morning because some USB cable got snagged on a counterweight bar and, your camera's sitting on the floor and that's, painful in its own way. This power box from svbony is attempting to solve a few of those issues. So let's move to the top-down view and jump into it. So this is the SV241 Pro. Don't confuse this with the SV241 non-Pro. They look similar, but they're pretty different. The Pro is better in almost every way, and it's at a price point that really isn't that bad. For about twice as much, there are offerings from companies like Wander Esper that do these sorts of things. And honestly, those seem to be like really great options. But for me, this seems like the way to go. So let's dig into this box and see if it's worth your money. Starting with the physical in the box, there's the power box itself. There's one of these bracket adapters. There's some screws. And then underneath here, there's a bunch of cables that get to a 12-volt accessory socket, drill cables, and really nice USB data cable, and a couple other these small accessory cables. But really the magic is what's going on here in this box. Okay, let's start with the input side, which is here. It's got a USB 3.0 PC port, which I have tested and is USB 3.05 gigabits per second. It does report that, triggers proper things to get those speeds. And then next to it is my least favorite thing about this, which is a DC port. Now this is DC 5.5 by 2.5. Now that sounds like what everything else uses, but it isn't. Most other equipment is ports like these, which are DC 5.5 by 2.1. 2.5, 2.1. Now, that's 2.1 versus 2.5 is the size of that center pin there. This one is slightly thicker than what I have for most of my extensions or what we use for most of our equipment. Now, to their credit, svbony does include that size connector over to the 12-volt accessory socket, and that's great, but I don't use a 12-volt accessory socket. I use an AC to DC power supply. And I didn't have any 2.5 millimeter center hole connectors. So I had to dig through all of my cables that I hadn't used in a while, and I found an extension that was also an adapter. I think I was using it.
It's 100 milliseconds. Partially the problem.
I would have appreciated if they included one of those adapters in the box, but my guess is that they did this because of the massive power requirements of having all of these outputs. And I could see in theory how a chunkier center pin is able to handle more of the amperage. So let's talk about all those outputs. On this side, there are 5 switchable 12-volt ports, marked 1 through 5. These are all the standard 5.5 by 2.1 interface. So your AstroCam and anything else will plug right in here just fine. Switching can be done through their little interface, or like I've been doing in Nina. So this 6 port over here on the end is another 5.5 by 2.1. It's always on. This would be useful like if you have your mini computer or something that's using the same power, and it just needs to always be on when this one has power. According to the specs, each port is able to supply up to 6 amps. That is a lot of power, and your bottleneck here is definitely going to be your power supply to the unit. svbony recommends, you see there, 12 volt
We'll get to the bottom.
power supply, and I would have to agree. I did measure less than 0.1 volt drop between the input voltage and any of the output voltage, which is basically within margin.
Circles all over.
I did this by connecting my voltmeter to the output side, recording that it was 12.2 volts, and then measuring the voltage straight out of my power adapter, which shows 12.21. So essentially, not really any losses. On the other side over here, we've got USB ports. So we've got 2 USB 3.0 ports as marked by the blue parts inside. I have tested these with a portable SSD and reached speeds of about 450 megabytes per second for read, and about 400 megabytes per second of writing to the drive. This was using a tool called Crystal Bismarck, running the SEQ1M 2-8T1 test. It will mean a lot for comparison. When I plugged that drive straight into a PC with a USB 3.0 port, it yielded only about 50 megabytes per second more on read than write. So the speeds are pretty good on this. And for what we're doing on imaging, it lives up to the spec close enough. There are also these 3 USB 2.0 ports. You can tell that they're with the white on them, and they operate at USB 2.0 speeds, and they're great for things like focus motors, etc., with high-speed fusion. There's also this Type-C interface on the side, though unfortunately it is only operating at USB 2.1 speed based on the sort of debugging that I was able to do, and I got about 40 megabytes per second read on that on this port. It is, able to output 2.5 amps, just like all these other ones, so that is kind of nice. These USB ports are also switchable in the software, but not individually. They're broken up into 2 groups, which is kind of weird, but I guess nice in case you want to try and unplug and plug something back in. So now on to the more interesting side. This collection of ports here. There is 2 of these 2.5 millimeter ports. These appear to be 4-pin ports, and amazingly, svbony actually includes 2 separate sensors, one for each. So this 2.5 temp port is meant to be a temperature sensor, which they include, and this one is meant to monitor the temperature of your telescope glass. But ideally, this would go between your dew heater band and your scope to get an idea of what the temperature is there. The box is essentially trying to understand what the probable temperature is of the glass so that it can, try and do some magic. We'll talk about that. This next port here is labeled T+H. This is for the included temperature and humidity sensor. And again, this is included. This is meant to sample the air around your telescope. And with these 2 sensors providing data, the box attempts to do something really cool with one of these next ports. So next we've got PWM out 1 and 2. Don't try plugging your Super Nintendo in here, you'll definitely blow something up. These are meant for your dew heater ports. And then at the end there's a DC 5.5 by 2.1, which is labeled regular. Now, initially for me, and I'm sure for some of you that may have already gotten these or were getting them a little bit early, and I thought this myself, this svbony didn't send me this thing for free. These ports here behave really oddly. So I emailed back and forth with svbony, and in my opinion, this is not from svbony, but in my opinion, someone done goofed. And there was some weirdness with the firmware. So in the first response from them, they said, hey, go make sure and update the firmware. So sure enough, on the 20th of October, I went to their website and there was a new firmware for this. So I had gotten my box on the 16th and I hadn't seen that firmware when I went to grab all the drivers. And I'm going to do a small tangent here for those people that actually need to do this update because it can be kind of weird. So skip forward if you don't need to do the update. All right, you got to do the update. Go to svbony's website. On the top, click over to support, then click software. You'll see the default select the SDK one. go past that and click on the one that says Windows. Scroll down to Firmware Package and Flashing Tool for sv405 Pro and download it. If this is your first time setting up the unit, scroll up a little bit, grab the ASCOM driver software for sv305 Pro, Astro Power. Box controller and the svbony hub controller. To do a firmware update on one of these, you plug the unit into power and into your PC, extract the zip file, that firmware package and flashing tool v1. Inside there is a folder called firmware package and flashing tool v1.1. Inside there is a folder called A-loader. Once you get there, you can double click on that main.exe app. This is all very strange, and you thought we were doing it, but it did work. This will open a completely Chinese app. I just started clicking around. In the drop-down, you have to select the COM port that is representing your Astro Power box. If you don't know which COM port this is, open Device Manager. To do that, go to the Start menu and search Device Manager, open it. Expand the ports area. Here you'll see a list of any devices that are recording a COM port to the system. The svbony device is tagged as USB serial CH34. If you have more than USB serial CH34 in this list, go to your computer and unplug everything that isn't this. And like with keyboard and mouse. And then go back and find it. And then it'll say USB serial CH340, COM 14. Okay, so back into the weird Chinese app with a COM port selected, click on the only clickable button in this weird app. A lot of text will scroll across that little thing on the bottom, and you'll eventually say something like device reset, and the scrolling will stop. On my computer, this took 1 to 2 minutes. And then after it's done that, let it sit and make sure it's done. Close that weird app, and then I unplug and replug the power box from USB and power. And you should be good to go. Back to the interesting things that this device claims to be able to do. And if none of this stuff works for you, rewind the video, go do the firmware update, or the ASCOM driver update. I may give svbony crap from time to time, but they do respond to emails quickly enough, typically by Linux business. Now, within email, under equipment/then switches, you can now select the svbony switch. You do have to click the configure icon next to the next to where you take it on the drop down and put in that COM port. This you just have to do this the first time, then click connect. And now you have access to all the things that this box can do. In the top part here are the gauges telling you some information. There's power, which best I can tell is total power flowing through the unit. There's voltage, which is the input voltage. There's ambient temperature, which is reading from the T and H sensor. There's ambient humidity, which is also reading from that T and H sensor. And then lens temperature, which is in theory reading from the temp probe that's attached to the temp probe. And dew point. This is a calculated figure based on those two ambient values. Under here, there are switches for each of the DC port, which, by the way, in that configuration thing where you put in the COM port, you can rename these ports to whatever you want. So you can do that and say, this one is for my camera, and yada. And there's also switches for the USB ports to turn those on and off like I mentioned, and it tells you which ports will turn on. Last are the variable ports. There's one labeled 0 to 15.3 volts, which is controlling that DC 5.5 jack, which is tagged as regulated. So this controls the voltage turning on. Then there's PWM1, which I'm told controls the ramp up of the magic with the PWM port, and PWM2, which controls the voltage modulation of PWM port 2, the physical port. So this PWM port wasn't working correctly before the firmware update. So it wasn't behaving oddly. For me, what it was doing was I would have my G controller plugged into PWM port 1, and I would move this slider for port 1 and nothing would happen. But if I would move the slider for port 2 in the software, then the repeater would get hot. Once I did the firmware update, all of this went away, and it started working somewhat normally. Here's actually what I got from svbony about this PWM1 flow. And as far as I can tell, this info isn't really published anywhere, so extra, read all about it. We got hot scoop on Deep Sky Labs. This is from svbony. PWM1 defaults to 79% power output upon power off. I actually think they meant 70%. When the ambient temperature is above 15 C and the heater sensor temperature rises 7.5 C above the dew point, heating automatically stops. When the ambient temperature is between 1 C and 15 C, heating stops when the heater temperature rises 10 C above the dew point. When the ambient temperature is below 0 C, the heater remains on and stops only when the heater temperature rises above 5 C. Users can flexibly adjust the default heating power by configuring the heater PWM1 level when the heater temperature falls below the protection level. Note manual control is not available when the heater is in protection mode. The default PWM1 output is smart defogger output port. PWM2 only supports manual settings. That's directly from me. Let me tell you how I'm sort of looking at it. So, at any given point, the box will turn on output of PWM1 in an attempt to raise the lens temperature to either 7.5 degrees C above the dew point, if it's over 15 C outside, or 10 degrees C above the dew point, if it's under 15 C outside, but above freezing. If it's below freezing, or only turn the PWM off once the value is over 5 C absolute. The slider on the PWM1 controls, in theory, the default heating power of that on time. That seems to be what I'm trying to understand. But I haven't actually seen that work. From what I can tell, it's just using 70% default power. I can tell that the ring is only consuming about 21 watts during the warming phase because of the power readings that the box gives us itself. If that ring was at full power, it will consume 30 watts. 21 watts is about 70% of 30 watts. So I'm going to say that for right now, the slider doesn't seem to do much of anything, but I will keep playing with it and letting I know if it Here's screen recording, though, of all of this happening in action. So to trigger the warning, because it was warm outside, I rubbed an ice cube, or what we're calling in the labs, a frigid science polyhedron, on the temperature probe to trick it into thinking that the glass was cold. And you can see the behavior. At idle, the box shows 5 to 7 watts being used. During the warm-up, we see it go up to about 26 to 28. And we can see that once it gets to around 7.5 C above the dew temperature, it throttles that down. So this is proof. It works. And you can see that I did this test a couple of times just to make sure. I tried moving the slider. You can see that if I move the slider, it doesn't really change the behavior, but it does still function. So, with this little box right here, you can have an effortless night with no dew creeping up on your stove because you forgot to set the temp correctly with your manual controller like I have tons of time. I don't want to just blast the power on those dew rings all night. As on like the C8, there's been reports that when it's too hot, it can lead to weird aberrations on sort of medium to bright stars. So smart control really is the best. I'll let this box do its thing, and you can tell it's working because in that screen, occasionally the value that's being put on the right-hand side will just put it up to full power or whatever, and you'll see the wattage being consumed. And here's some pictures of what my setup looks like when I took this and actually put it onto my machine. I've been using this for like a week now, because I wanted to make sure that it did what it was supposed to do before I filmed this video. I use the very convenient mounting points on the bottom of the box to attach it to a Losmandy clamp. So this clamps onto a Losmandy. I have a separate rail on the top of my main scope, so I just put it. I connected the Celestron D-ring to PWM1. I want to play with trying to get the temperature signal off of the D-ring in the future, as it should be able to work. If anyone has any ideas, please comment down below. But I know that the Celestron D-ring is 2 poles, and the svbony box input is 4 poles. So maybe I'll just slice up the cable and see what I can do. In the meantime, I did what I thought was pretty clever, and I ran the temp sensor up to the collector plate and flipped it to the place that would normally hold the power wire with the power wire. So this gives it a somewhat imprecise but close enough temperature reading that it has worked well the last couple nights that I've been using it. And then I plugged that into the temperature sensor. The TNH sensor, I plug that in and run that to some open air down the main cable bundle because I don't want it to be too warm or too cold if it's too close to like electronics. I have my focus motor powered off the power side, and it's plugged in, the data is plugged into the USB 2 port. I have my guide cam connected to a USB 2 port as well, as it's the 120 mini and it's only capable of USB 2.1. The main imaging camera is connected to a USB 3 port, one of the blue ones, and the power to it is coming from the power side. And this is all fed, the box is fed with a high quality USB.
Has no business making Gracie's dish towel smell this good. Especially after that. Our greatest scent ever. Nutri Plus with Oxy.
little cloudy out there. Might be a short one tonight. So wait and see. Mike Moon said. right there. It's a little cloudy though. Ball of light right there. Bring it back.
We were wondering if the
Damn it. Where'd it go, man? Surely it's coming by again. I watched it go backwards. We're still not tracking now. That's just discouraging, to say the least. We're looking up in Virgo here, I believe. Between Spigot and Arcturus. Closer to Spicot's where we, well, actually, pretty much in the middle. That's where we're at. We could be looking at somewhere by the chain. There it is. There it is. Come on, tracker. Get it together. Track, goddammit. Why'd it go by so fast? Oh man, come on, dude. I'm trying to get this. It's gotta try. Dude, what the? stack it too. Pulling too fast. Well, it's tracking there finally. But yeah, I'm off. It's not tracking though. It's shooting. What is that thing? It's a galaxy, dude. It's not much of one. Yeah, it ain't much. Where it is. We're going to shoot an awful lot of it. We're losing it now. Okay. Well, there ain't not much there. She gone. And she ain't tracking either. Chill. crackers off. Cooler is at 0%, temperature 22.3 Celsius, target 0.0 Celsius. So I don't know how to turn it on. We gotta figure it out. Let me know if you see a galaxy. That's what we're looking for.
Simple. I only pay $10 a month for my internet connection. Fast, unlimited, anywhere. Have you heard about Ryoko Pro? This is the cutting-edge portable Wi-Fi.
Probably gonna be a short night. It's just too cloudy, man. Just too cloudy. Yep. We're going to be wrapping it up here shortly because the clouds are moving in and it's going to be cloudy for the rest of the night. So we'll probably be wrapping it up shortly. No luck in finding nothing much tonight. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. That's a wrap. that's a wrap. We'll end the stream there.